Welcome to the Star Wars Collectors Archive podcast. With your hosts, Sky Pay, Bud, and Stephen B. Danley. I couldn't figure it out last week, Steve, or last month. How's it going?
Good. Well, so wait. I guess first things first. Welcome to 126. I had a complete change of heart after that
Wait,
last one.
yes. So the numberings. Wait, 126.
Yeah,
So
of
I tried to
the main
change it.
show.
I
You
tried to
tried
change.
to like boost it to like 140 something.
Right.
But like the second after that happened, like the inner like archivist and librarian in me just started like twitching, like this is
Yeah.
against programming. No, but sorry. So
Well, yes.
it's 126. Yeah.
126. But really, it's sort of episode two as well.
Yeah.
It's sort of the second episode of our new version of whatever this show ever was. So it's, if you're listening to it and not seeing us, there is a video version that'll be on YouTube. Apparently, we're still having some trouble getting everything on iTunes. We're gonna keep working on it, Steve.
Yes. Yeah.
And
We
and
got the best on it.
yes, and by that he mean wait, who's the best?
I was hoping to be Lobart.
Yeah, okay, maybe. So yeah, so this is basically the idea that we had is, we're going to get into the last 17 figures, but
Yeah.
before we do, we're really making you wait. So I sent Steve a sort of idea of what it's going to look like. Are you sure that's not too loud? The dog's walking over my head. Is that's
No,
not picked up on the mic? Okay,
I'm not hearing it.
okay, good. Because to me, it's like they're tap dancing on my brain.
We'll be
So
getting some of that from my end as soon as Eleanor's back too. So
yeah. So this is the deal. We are going to record this month's episode, which is Star Wars Collecting Sucks Now. Next month, we're going to record the follow-up episode, No, It Doesn't. That's also going to be a 30th anniversary celebration of the Star Wars Collectors Archive and a 10-year anniversary celebration of the blog.
crazy.
Of course, I call it the Stephen Blog Danley. Uh, and then after that, we're still not going to get to the last 17 figures because we're going to have a return with Matt George of Obi-Wan Kenobi. And then we're still not going to go to the last 17 because we're going to have Jabba. And then we're still not going to go because we're going to have Sice Noodles. And then we'll do the first of the last 17. I don't even know who that is, Steve. Is that Amanda Man? Who is that?
That's a good question. I haven't looked at Kellerman in, well, probably like 460 whatever days since we
Yeah.
last did the Pop Blue episodes. Yeah, I don't know. We'll figure that out. We'll get there. But I like the Gargan interlude as you called it. I think we needed it.
Yeah, I think we do. Just to sort of, because that's the way that the show was originally, right? The first 12 episodes were just talking about whatever. And
Whatever was
then
going on. Yeah.
yeah, eventually we settled on this kind of format. So why not just kind of do whatever? So,
Yeah.
this is definitely a dark episode because I'm going to be talking about, why does it suck and why is my entire collection in boxes and why do I not care about Star Wars anymore and why am I this close from selling out at all times? And then next month we'll talk about why not and what's going to be special about next month's episode, Steve.
Well, let's see. I have a good sense that maybe it could be somewhat live with the two of us.
That's right. We're going to be in the same place.
Yeah, yeah.
For the
It's
first time ever, Steve will be visiting me out here in Rochester, New York. So we're going to be recording together, and
yeah,
it'll be super fun.
yeah. I cannot wait. We've been in New York together, but we've never been to
Yeah.
Rochester. So it's a long time coming.
Yep. Super fun. So I think, Steve, maybe we should get to our slideshow. That's the way that we've been doing these things now.
Yeah.
The feedback to our last episode was positive.
Yeah, I'm glad that people still remembered us. That was good, and it was an interesting story too. So,
Yeah.
yeah, it's I know you said we're going to be kind of treading down the path of darkness a little bit here again, but you know what? I told you that I would try and be the beacon of hope when I could
Okay.
this
Good.
episode. I will pull you back from the ledge as often as I can. Some things I probably won't be able to, but we'll see.
Speaking of hope, do you know who ended up winning the auction for the Obi-Wan Kenobi?
Was
I
it
mean, for
you?
the Darth Vader. Yeah, it was me.
Okay.
And
I thought that was how I
it
played it.
wasn't the opening bid. I ended up getting it for 300. So
Okay.
anyways, I'm
Yeah.
proud to have that piece of oh, I haven't paid for it yet. Okay. Well, you know what? This is the thing that happens. You just forget over time. All right. Well, let's share the screen.
Okay.
Let's get to our wonderful slides, which Steve made. Right, that looks
Yeah, I
slides.
started it and and then I always like I give it to you for your second round of edits.
Yes.
But yeah. Um
So what? Why did you open up on this one, Steve?
well, so when we first decided we were actually going to come back, I realized that we'd been in exile for a while. It felt like
Okay.
exile, and for me, it was solitude, and it wasn't, I just got the sense that, we were coming out of our stone huts finally
I got
after
you.
a long time. And yeah, I mean, I just grabbed probably my favorite picture of the two of us
Yes.
and just dropped right into good old whatever that island's called, the funky Jedi secluded island. But yeah,
So
it
if
represented
you're
to me
just
where
listening, yes. If you're just listening, it's a picture of Steve and I at my wedding wearing Pepsi onesies. Steve has a Darth Vader helmet. I have what can only be described as an old German tourist hat.
yes,
And
yeah,
yeah, we're super happy
yeah,
and awesome. So
yeah,
that's the beacon of light. Um, this is the I think you should leave meme that I just came up with now, and
yeah,
a lot of it comes up to this. So I'm the kind of guy, ever since The Simpsons, I mediate my life through comedy quotes. And sometimes that's Big Lebowski, and you're right there with me.
yes,
Uh, but sometimes it's other stuff. And so this one GIF, which I'm showing, is from the Detective Crashmore sketch from I Think You Should Leave.
yes.
Character played by Santa Claus says, I don't care if I die at all. Everything has sucked lately. When I was thinking about like the collection, like the hobby of vintage Star Wars collecting, yeah, I mean, really, all my like my entire collection is behind me. Like this huge, there's like a huge banner from the official pics thing of Chewbacca from
Yeah.
Celebration, I don't know, 2 ago, and inside there's all my carded stuff. Everything's all boxed up, and I just sort of don't have that passion. I don't quite have the same passion and the same level, and so it has to be everyone else's fault but me, Steve.
Well, I'll say that, and I could stand in solidarity with that part of it. I mean, yeah, I haven't really looked at my collection. It's the same thing, but it's like it's for good reasons, which at least for us personally, it makes sense.
Yeah.
But I totally get that. Like if I don't look at something, if I don't pull something out and look at it for a while, you get that little bit of detachment. But we're gonna
we're
we're gonna
gonna
get there.
we're gonna plow through it, and
Yeah.
I'm very happy that I still have everything, but it just
Yeah,
made me
yeah.
think that I'm gonna be putting forward a theory that everything has just been getting worse.
Yeah,
So
externally, it's not just our little universe here, but it's influenced by the bigger the
right,
bigger landscape, I think is what you're getting at.
yeah, and so what we have up here now is 2003, the rise of Rebel Scum. So the funny thing is, I forget, I don't know why I was talking to Ron Salvatore, who was almost on this episode, but
Almost, almost.
I don't think we could quite handle that yet.
That level of bummerness.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, it's how laconic he gets, because he's very
Yeah.
funny, but that sort of like dry darkness. Like I think we need my sort of ebullient darkness, and then hopefully
Mhm.
we'll have his dry darkness to celebrate the archive next month. That'll be
Yeah.
perfect.
Yes. Yeah.
So he says that the hobby really died with Rebel Scum. So that's very funny because that was so long ago. Um, but but really, if we think about the forums at Rebel Scum, and this is we're not the first people to talk about this. People talk about this a lot, but I don't know if we really have, Steve. If we've really dedicated time to discussing the shift from forums to Facebook, have we?
It probably anecdotally and here and there, but not in a focused way. So no, I don't think so.
So, in case you're new to the hobby, Rebel Scum was a place that had a message board. And on that message board, you could post a topic and then people could respond. There are
Yeah.
some things that it did very poorly, like you couldn't have images. Okay. So, you just have to imagine what it was like, where most of the time you just didn't like, you had to own a website or have space somewhere or
Right.
some kind of weird photo bucket that you could link to. But other than that, it was all just text,
Yeah.
and the thing that made it special was that everything was cataloged and
Yeah.
kept. and it was all divided by different areas. So if you're interested in modern toys, you could go to the modern area. If you're interested in just talking about anything, you could go to the cantina. But in general, it created a real community, especially in the vintage community of
Hmm.
people.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and so there's a couple parts to that, Steve, that I added some slides in here.
Okay. This is where this is where I get excited because
Oh, oh,
yeah.
right. Was this what I want to talk about next? Yes. Okay.
Okay.
Oh, okay. So I also wanted to say that the other thing that we didn't mention is I think to me, and this could just be nostalgia, just when I collected the most is when it was the best, right?
Yeah.
Just like
Yeah.
life was best when I was a kid, whatever. But there was a period of time after Revenge of the Sith came out where it seemed like Star Wars might be dead, like especially 2007 Celebration 4. Do you remember that, Steve?
I do. Yeah. It was you know, it didn't feel like necessarily a dark time was coming, but it was gonna be that was gonna be what it was. It was gonna be pretty low key. It felt like it anyway.
Yeah.
From
And
then
and
on.
had we known, that probably would have been awesome because
Yeah.
because it was really pared down. It was just
Yeah.
like whoever was there not speculating because it was a bad gig to speculate in, right? Like it was a
Yeah.
bad guess to speculate. It was not, it seemed as though the days of big money were gone. The days of big importance were gone. It was going to slowly slip into being as relevant as I Love Lucy and Wizard of Oz, right?
Yeah.
So that's what, so I'm sort of trying to paint a picture here that like Rebel Scum in 2007 is in some ways a high point
Yeah.
because it's this point where there seemed to be nothing on the horizon. So eventually things moved over. Steve, what time do you think Facebook took over in the hobby?
So I was trying to figure out when some of the bigger groups were established, and it's nice. It does say like established 9 years ago, established 6 years ago, things like that. And it seemed like just on a really, really cursory look that most things were right around 2010 to 2013. That's a kind of a wide range, but I feel like over that
Yeah.
couple year period is when it happened.
Yeah. And I mean we definitely, I mean I haven't listened to our first episodes since we recorded them.
Nope.
But we definitely, when we started the show in 2010, February 2010, this is our 14th anniversary episode, minus the 1 year we didn't do it. It definitely, like, we totally only posted to Rebel Scum for the first
Yeah.
couple of years.
Hmm.
And we didn't really know how Facebook worked. We didn't really trust it. And and I think it's because of the following two things. Now that I have the slides in mind, the two things that really matter, and I don't think get enough credit because people talk about how the information is collected and how it's all gone and how there's too many pictures and there's too much money. But
Hmm.
Steve, the pyramid is power. Okay, hierarchy actually matters. So Rebel Scum had two means of establishing hierarchy. You could actually have a number of like bars next to your name that was indicated your
Right.
rank.
That's right. Yeah, yeah.
And certainly many people who had tons of posts were not super well respected, right? Like that it was not guaranteed that just
Yeah.
because you posted a lot,
Right.
but it was a clear indication of the level of dedication along with your join date. So a join date for Facebook means nothing because everyone's been on Facebook forever. So
Yeah.
when I joined in 2005, I think it was, I think
Hmm.
August, no, August 2004, I joined. Um, that date was always right there next to me. And if someone joined in 2006 and they saw that I had 5 bars and people, like you saw how people talk to each other and you paid a certain amount of deference to people who you knew were there longer, right?
Yeah. 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 That and then the whole screen name thing of,
Right. Right. And everyone had a name and a pseudonym, and there was that distance.
that
Unless you were a cool guy like me, and you just use your normal name.
Yeah, I mean, I had the classic Jedi Steve from
Yeah.
2000 that I remember trying to. This is speaking to like the kind of the technology is like I remember attempt after attempt after attempt to just update that existing name to just be my name, and I could never get it to work. So I created a new one, I think probably around the same like time as you did, maybe slightly after. And so I feel like it was John Alvarez would always go back and find my old Jedi Steve posts and make sure to point those out to me. But then at one point it just randomly changed to what I requested it to. So there was two of me.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's funny.
It's just yeah, one of those funny things.
But there was this whole hierarchy there,
Yeah.
especially if you had like a super basic name, but that name, like, Ron and Gus, both
Yeah.
their names are just Ron and Gus because they were
Hmm.
so early and they were so there.
Yeah.
And certainly the people who were at the top of the hierarchy were the people who either posted the most and were most involved in the community, or who those people respected, right? So that's how you had Ron and Gus and Duncan and the people who have legitimately put the most amount of work and the most amount of time over the longest period of time into
Yeah.
doing this hobby. It's not given to them because they took it, it's given to them because they made it, right? So all of that was there, and that, in my opinion, it really helped. It gave you something to aspire to, because it's not like there was a knighting process. They didn't say, Sky, you are officially no longer a noob, right?
Right.
but but eventually your posts would get more attention. Eventually people would interact with you more, and it was this period of time where essentially everyone's trying to see, are you just a burn in return? Are you just going to show up and leave? And there, you just see the same kind of thing happen over and over again. Someone would show up hot and ready like a Little Caesars pizza, and he shows up. I would say she, but that there's only, as far as I know, only been one she, and she ended up being a catfisher on Rebel Scum Vintage Age. That's not true, obviously. Um, but it's mostly just dudes showing up, spending big, and just flaming out, and you sort
Yeah.
of watch them, and you didn't give them immediate respect. It didn't matter if they bought a lot of stuff. I showed up, I bought a lot of stuff. I spent Steve $600 on a proof, out of my mind. A one of a kind proof? Are you
Yeah.
kidding? $100 on a mint Uzai? Oh my God, big money. And it definitely was not the case of the big spenders get the respect. You had to put in the time, you had to share the information, and you had to do all that. And that obviously has all been lost. And that's what it is, that, in my opinion, that's what was lost in Rebel Scum. What do you think, Steve?
I mean, that's probably the biggest loss. Yeah, I I'm so curious. I haven't gone back to the site to really try and find something in such a long time, but I remember searching and trying to retrieve something was pretty difficult. Um,
Yep.
so maybe that's better with Facebook. I'm not sure. But I think the structure, I really like the structure. Um, and then yeah, just kind of knowing where to go to seek your answer. And I feel like now it's just it's a much wider sea to try
Right.
and
And
navigate. Yeah.
and that is definitely worth mentioning. It's just I wanted to come at it from a different angle, because that is the main thing people say, is that it's so divided. Where do you go? Where do you go? It was
Yeah.
better when there was just one place, but also just this other stuff too. I mean, a funny example is, so I noticed that on the back of Star Wars figures, the pictures on the back, they started making it so that the hole punch wouldn't cut anyone's head off.
Right. Yeah.
You should tell. And I posted that when I was a newbie, and I got like two responses. And I remember being so bitter and angry. Like, these morons. If I was just talking about having a rocket fit, more people would react to me. And then like a couple years later, I started this series of threads called the relative rarity scale.
Yeah, I remember those. Yeah.
Dude, I was so nervous when I put those up there. Like I was like, who am I to start a thread? Like,
Yeah.
do I really think that I can be the first person to do this? That's part of the reason why I was so excited that Jason West, who at the time was somebody who I think had a higher standing in the hobby, like why he sort of like gave me the cosign and went on to do it. It's
Yeah.
and just just those days are gone, right? You can go on to any of the pages, anywhere, and just post something and post a picture and get a conversation going, and that's
Yeah.
amazing. Which,
Yeah.
which sort of ties into my next beautiful slide, Steve, which is the. You ever play Lemmings, Steve?
Yeah, I have, but not nearly as much as other
Yeah,
things. But yeah.
yeah, yeah. gatekeepers matter. Like it's actually good to have a community that has people who are turning people away, I think. And I think within reason, right? I don't think that gatekeepers should be, all powerful whoosy what's its. Um, but knowing that there's people who are watching out for the greater good and who are like very suspicious and sort of watching out.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's kind of tied into the hierarchy thing, but I think that's another thing that Rebel Scum helped to do because hey, I made a great point about the card backs, not decapitating the figures, but I just hadn't earned it yet, baby. I had to work and I had to start and I do a podcast for 10 years so that still nobody cares. God, when
See, that's the thing, yeah. And that's a point. I feel like that's Ron talking.
yes. Yeah,
But
yeah,
yeah,
if
no,
Ron
it's
were here, but that's true. It's like
yeah.
fundamentally, it's quite possible that we haven't gotten any dumber because we never were smart in the first place, as is evidenced by the fact that not enough people read Ron's articles. Yeah. So, what is this? Oh, oops. Sorry. So, I went nuclear on you, Steve, and
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
I want to talk about an imperial commissary. I want to talk about Michael Havens in a respectable way. I'm not looking to start any wars, and I want to talk about Ross Barr.
Sure.
I mean, I consider a friend, so I'm definitely not trying to start a war with him. But I think to really study the history of how did we get to this place that kind of sucks more, I think we can see that there's been a sort of Ross model and a Havens model and how
Hmm.
they've been different. Are you with
Hmm.
me here, Steve? Do you see where I'm going?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So first of all, to Ross, this is a screen grab. I just grabbed off one of his lives. I don't know. I couldn't resist using it. It's an amazing picture. But so when Ross got started, he was on Rebel Scum, but
Right. Yeah.
he was sort of the first king of Facebook, and I think we even called him that when we interviewed him. We were sort of dismissive of him, and I know I did. I sort of high-hatted him. I wasn't like hazing, but I was like, is this guy for real? Is this guy for real? Is he a real deal in the hobby? Is he just here? He had as much respect as Chris Georgoulias because he had thousands and thousands of people who are thinking of him as the expert, right? But
Right.
the thing that
Yeah.
Ross did is that he ended up like I think he got a little bit, drunk off of that, but then chilled out and
Hmm.
really recognized that he had to sort of like not try to be the center of everything and sort of work to defer to the people who were there before, even if they were constantly giving him shit, even if they questioned him on everything and weren't entirely fair and awesome to him at all times because he
Yeah.
was so much power in the hobby at after only being in a little while, to the point now where it's like the difference between Ross and Chris Georgoulias is that whatever Chris Georgoulias created more and started a lot more, but in terms of like my mind of like who do I trust in the hobby, I trust him the same. Like I mean, I know Chris better, but you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like he and I think another great example would be someone like Brian Angel, where it's
Hmm.
like
Hmm.
he popped up and I'm like, who is this guy and why is he trying to be the king of everything? But it's like understanding that hierarchy and working within it, and it's not like okay, so in my mind whatever, there's the top of the hierarchy has to be Gus, Ron, and Chris because they started a lot of the stuff, but like it's not so much that they're at the top, it's more that like we all sort of work to like keep improving and
Hmm. Hmm.
building you know
Yeah.
so then on the other side, we have Michael Havens, who has been on the show a ton of times. Happy to have him on here. And what's interesting is, I mean, first of all, I need to say I don't think he has been treated fairly by many people in the hobby. So if he has an axe to grind, I understand that. I don't blame him on that. I don't think I
Yeah.
have mistreated him fairly, but that's neither here nor there. Um, I do think perhaps people have been too dismissive of him because of his success, and I
Hmm.
I do think there's legitimate hate, not like hatred, but like hating, jealous, and a combination of jealousy and anger, right?
Right. Yeah.
But then there's a thing that happens where when he talks about his place in the hobby, he very often gets extremely angry and has even recently posted some like, I don't know if you've seen them, Steve, but some like really unhinged rants about the inner circle and about the old guys who are out to get him and constantly trying to do this and like taking
Hmm.
shots at people who've worked with him before and all this. and
Okay.
and the thing of it is that it, it's not how it works. Like, I mean, it is how it works, right? Because he
Well,
is, I mean, it's how it works. And this is why I think it sucks now. It's not his fault. If it wasn't him, it might have been someone else, right?
right. Yeah.
But but the fact that somebody who has contempt for the way things were intentionally tries to blow up how things were
Right. Yeah.
is now legitimately, if I were to start collecting Star Wars toys now, that's exactly how I would do it. I would have no idea how to get to Ross Barr or how to get to me or Ron or Gus, right? Like that's absolutely it. Um, it's there's just a loss.
Yeah.
There's a loss with that history, and then a lot of it becomes tied into this concept of what the IC is, and whether or not you like that concept is up to you. There's a lot of great things about it. I think the IC 101 is a great idea, like awesome. Like
Hmm.
seriously, I give that a lot of props. But anyways, so what do you think, Steve? Or you don't want to touch it?
Well, I mean, I whether it's intentional or not, I think just I've never really been all that connected to either. I think either of them. But it seems like, I think going back to something that maybe is like Rebel Scum or originating, it's that structure and then seeing how that's been adapted now, where there's just so much more of everything. There's so many more collectors, there's so many more opportunities of like rabbit holes you can go down and not I feel like there was, after things kind of got going, there was at least some semblance of structure and some of the kind of core collecting groups that formed with a lot of the same kind of community people running them. And I think that's another thing
Right.
we kind of talked about, but like the sense of responsibility of the folks who were like the admins of Rebel Scum and just really kind of not maybe I think I probably didn't appreciate how much work that took to do that. And I think
Right.
as the whole kind of universe expanded, I think maybe more people realized how much work it takes to successfully and like respectfully run a group rather than a forum, I guess now. But I
Right.
I think just yeah, there's something about that negativity that seems to creep up with things surrounding Mike and I've purposely just said, you know what, like I can't even I'm not
Yeah.
gonna
Yeah.
go down that road and
Yeah. I mean, neither.
and well but yeah no
No, I
I
haven't tried to, but yes, I know.
right no it's the thing with you it doesn't seem like
Yeah,
it's not we're for not trying it's,
yeah,
but yeah I don't
yeah.
know
I agree about the negativity thing. That there is inevitably a lot of negativity, and I think it just often boils down to the thing which he says on multiple occasions. Okay,
yeah
oops. On multiple occasions, the thing that he says is okay. So this is going to arrive at a place of
okay
peace, by the way, Steve.
okay
So
I'm glad
um,
yeah
so he has said on multiple occasions, okay, so his spiel, right, which is a pretty, it's like a stump speech. Like he gives it a lot. He gives it very often. He said it to me 30 times, right?
yeah
That
yeah
and I think it's worth really breaking down. So the speech is, Steve, do you know this about the train tracks?
Mm-mm.
Okay, so
I
he
don't
says
think
that there he calls the IC a train, and it's
okay
boiling down the track, and anybody can get on board, and everybody's invited to just come play Star Wars with me. But
right okay
if you don't want to play, then you're going to get run over on the tracks.
hmm.
Okay, that is
Okay
that is a direct quote.
okay
That is the rhetoric of the IC.
okay
So now if you're a fan of the IC, you hear it and you focus on the fact of saying, "Oh, well, isn't that nice that they're inviting anyone to play?" Right?
Hmm.
And I don't consider myself an enemy of the IC, so I think I'm on that train too. I don't do anything with it or whatever it is, but they are certainly not my enemy. They like Star Wars toys. I like Star Wars toys, right? But the idea of saying this this threat on the other side of it really emphasizes the idea, and it's always been the problem, that it's very much centered on one person who wants to be at the top of a pyramid.
Right.
and
Yeah.
and and he will never be at the top of a pyramid. I will never be at the top of this pyramid. Okay, you will never be. Okay,
Nope.
like it just will never happen because we didn't found this hobby, right? Like the hobby was founded, and I'm sure everyone who I'm talking about would laugh at me saying that they're at the top of a pyramid, but I'm just trying to call it like I see it, you know.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I was talking to Gus about when he was at a Star Wars, I mean, a Beatles collectors event, and he was in a room, and he's like a novice Beatles collector, and he spotted the Gus of the Beatles collectors,
Okay.
and
Yeah.
he walks up to him, and they were able to have like this kind of conversation where like they understood, because this is the guy who like had Ringo's underpants and John's sunglasses, you know what I mean? And
Okay.
it's like, he had the Death Star, right? And
Yeah.
like
Right.
they had this understanding, and it's not like they're special people, they're not better than us, they just contributed a lot to a very important and lucrative hobby. Anyway, so like so that's the thing, is there's no amount of like trains that are going to be that's ever going to make it that's the case. But
Yeah.
this is my peace offering, Steve.
Okay.
Are you ready?
I'm ready. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. That's Thomas on the
Yeah.
left, and
Right.
that's
Right.
Percy.
Percy.
Percy
Yeah.
on
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
right.
Right.
So listen, man, you got your IC thing going. You are on that train via Con Dios. Go right down to Nashville and Florida, wherever you want to go. This older train track, it's right next to you. It's cool. If you ever want to come over and use it, that's cool too. But we could just be on different trains. We don't have to run over each other. We don't have to fight. We can just be on separate train tracks. You have your thing going, we have our thing going, and we're not going in the same direction.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
What do you
I.
think? Is that
I.
peaceful?
I think, yeah, considering some of the other things that I've seen, that's quite peaceful.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, because
Uh,
like because that's the thing, is that, I mean, it drives me crazy because the dude deserves a lot of credit, right? I mean, he
yeah,
really
no, no,
does. He
there's
like
some,
he legitimately deserves a lot of credit. The problem is he can't take any criticism. So because
right.
of that, and I mean that. I mean, like, he can't take any criticism, which is why we've beefed so much, because I consider it to be the greatest act of kindness to be honest with someone and treat them seriously. And if you're honest with someone, you treat them seriously, and they do something whack and you don't tell them, then you're not treating them like an equal, right?
Yeah.
So like I consider him to be my equal. So if he does something that I think is like, I don't know about that, then I'm not trying to attack him or the IC. I'm just saying I don't know about that, right?
Yeah.
Same
Right.
as I did with Ross, same as I've had 20 conversations like that with Chris Georgoulias over the years, where we disagree on stuff, right?
Sure. Yeah.
So, anyways, but that's why I'm trying to say, like, the IC train tracks are awesome, and it's awesome that they have it, and it's especially great that they're so welcoming to new collectors. And I don't, so that's my peace offering. But that's, I think, something that's been lost. I do think that the hobby is probably a worse place for the IC existing, but it's actually probable that if it wasn't the IC, it would have been something else. So it's not the IC's fault,
Yeah. No, I
or the
think that,
technology and the time's fault.
yeah, exactly. It's a product of its environment.
Now I'm still
Right.
trying to be Mr. Nice Guy, Steve. How am I doing on
I,
being
you
Mr.
know,
Nice?
you're doing pretty well. I gotta say,
Okay,
you're,
because the other thing that makes the hobby suck is my stupid idea to have a mocking page. Okay, listen.
Yeah.
Now listen. Let the truth be told. It was my idea, and I roped in Mike Hooper and Bill Cable because I knew they would be good at it, and I didn't want to be the only person doing it. But it's totally my idea. I thought it would be a good and wonderful, healthy thing to have an outlet for the hobby where we could talk and satirize ourselves. I did not know that we're not capable of that. Satire is a lost art. I am very disappointed in all of you. I'm pointing at the camera, disappointed at all of you for not understanding what mock was supposed to be. Instead, thinking it was a way to make to fat shame Michael Havens, which is what it basically became. And I am
Oh,
ashamed that it became that. I tried to remove every single thing. I don't care if he believes me or doesn't believe me. I think that's terrible. I think it's lame. I think
yeah.
there's plenty of things to make fun of with somebody who does as many outstandingly mockable things as him. That is the least. That is a non-funny thing. But
Yeah.
I use that as an example of just like, in the end, it's that meanness. It wasn't meant to be mean. It was actually meant to be loving. It's meant to be a place where we could talk about stuff and have a vent and have a healthier community. But it didn't work out that way at all. Um, and then when we closed it down, Jim Jones opened up his own, or
Mm.
whatever, maybe,
Mhm.
before. And there's other things like it. And I like Dianoga. It's actually where I get most of my hobby news, but it is definitely
Oh, okay.
spirited. It's
Okay.
sort of like TMZ, it's sort of like, well, it
Okay.
sort of has to exist, but it might be doing more harm to the fabric of the community than doing good. I don't know, Steve. What do you think of mocking pages?
Well, I got the initial spirit of the one that you guys had set up, and I think I had posted one or two really bad jokes that were had nothing to do with collecting at all. It was just stupid Star Wars stuff. And but then I don't know, I kind of lost track of it, and it wasn't until I think you were letting me know that things were getting out of control that I'm like, oh. And so it was
Yeah,
I was this is going to be probably a continuing theme of this episode. I was a bit removed. I have been
right.
for a long time. So there's so much things like this that like with the Dianoga, I like didn't even know that existed until recently. So yeah,
Yeah.
way
I
out
mean,
of the loop.
it to its credit, it does do a lot of what I wanted Mock to do. It
Okay.
doesn't do as much of the mean-spirited stuff. It used to be. It used to be just like a dumping ground, a Haven's like trash page, right? Which is what he called Mock, and it wasn't, right? But it
Yeah.
became that. So he was right
Yeah.
in a way, right?
Right.
Um,
Okay.
which if you're trying to get power, if people are making fun of you, that's a sign that you have power, which I want, anyways. Anyway, it's it's like, that's how you know you're doing well, if people are making fun. Uh, anyway, so that kind of ties into this sort of mean spiritedness, and that's just, like, when it comes to personally, a couple of different times, because of things I said on mock, or because of things I said here, people like called my workplace
Yeah, that I remember that, and I just
and left menacing voicemails for me on my phone and everything. And
that's when you've like fully descended into madness. Like that's
yeah.
just yeah.
So I mean, I would get it if I was legitimately trying to hurt people or do something that was illegal or whatever it is.
Yeah.
But I don't like talking about it because I don't want it to happen again.
No. Yeah.
Really unpleasant. And I'm telling you, that's not why I'm being careful with talking about people. I think I have not always been as respectful as I should be when I'm talking about other people. Um, but it was really just like, it really, it didn't scare me, right? I didn't think that I was actually in any real danger,
Yeah.
but it was just a reminder that, just like, the internet used to be a place you could go and talk about Star Wars. Now the internet has invaded Star Wars too much. It's too
Yeah.
much internet, not enough Star Wars collecting, if that makes sense.
Right.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, that sounds like that could be a really awesome point, but I sort of swallowed it. But yeah. So that's my sort of Facebook question, Facebook question thing
Hmm.
there. There is obviously the fracturing element of it.
Yeah.
Also, just every new technology loses older guys. And, you know, I remember when I first met Duncan, I didn't know who he was because he didn't post on Rebel Scum.
Hmm.
So he said that his name was Duncan, and he bought 2005 Revenge of the Sith, Kellogg's Presents charity booklet for the charity screening of Revenge of the Sith. And
Yeah.
he bought that from me. And I remember thinking, oh, cool, someone else with long hair. And I didn't know that he had written all those articles, or
Yeah.
all that work on the archive. And that's
Oh,
the
that's
other bit of it.
that's Yeah.
That's the other bit when we go back to like the problem with the internet is also that we've abdicated, right? Like
Yeah.
older collectors seeded the ground and allowed it to be taken over. And sometimes it was with people who we got along with really well, and sometimes it wasn't. And what
Hmm.
were we doing? Why weren't we in there? I mean, that's why I give a lot of credit to Jason Smith, who I think started the sort of first real,
That, yeah, the really, really big one. Yeah, we mentioned that last time. Yeah.
yeah, and like he understood, he knew how to make that transition from
Hmm.
one thing to the next.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah. I guess one final point I'll make on the whole Facebook thing. I know we've mentioned Chris G a couple times, but his kind of prophecy about the kind of unreliability of it all. It definitely has come true, and it's hit me, and also someone else we know. I think with Stefan Falcourt. Like it, this is the technology thing with like a huge mega behemoth that is Meta or Facebook. It would just randomly delete like pages and groups if it had the term Star Wars in it, and
oh
so I know
yeah,
like yeah, so um, I know Stefan lost a lot. I lost the whole thing that I had tried to start as just a resource gone, and so I'm like, Chris was right. Like,
yeah,
thankfully, I don't know. It's just something to think about because and whenever I tried to resolve it, you're just talking to a robot that doesn't respond. You cannot speak to a human being no matter what.
right.
So, sorry, Chris was right.
Yeah, he often
He's
was.
always almost yeah, usually right.
Well, okay, except he said that no one would support the archive party
That's true. Okay, maybe
if
not
they
that
didn't
time.
get their money back. That was the one time he was wrong. So,
Yeah, yeah.
but anyway, so just kind of going
Yeah.
back through my slides here,
Here we go. Yeah.
Percy. Just so you know, we'll take Percy. He can be Thomas.
Sure. Yeah.
Thomas is the star, right? I mean, Percy's cool,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
Thomas is the star, right? That's fine.
Uh,
All right, and then I think, I mean, again, going back to the 2007 as being the peak of the whole thing for me, because that's when I was 30 years old or whatever, and Steve was almost born. Um, the Disney buying Star Wars, that's just so much of everything that's going to follow. So much that the no matter how big Star Wars was, it wasn't really IP. And that might sound romantic, but I think when it belonged to George Lucas, it was George Lucas's vision and George Lucas's thing to mess around with, but it didn't feel like IP, and it's just slowly becoming IP and content and content and IP, and it wasn't always that way.
yeah, I agree to that in general. But at the same time, I think in the notes you sent to me, just kind of the increase in corporate lameness, and that's absolutely true. I think it's not just Star Wars; it's everything that that people enjoy. Basically, joy is no longer something that can be had just on its own like that. But I feel like once Star Wars became big, that process did start. It just was not nearly as massive and all encompassing as it's been the last, I guess, over a decade now. But it's just interesting because, like, that the kind of seeds of that go back to the mid 80s where, George was wanting to do theme park stuff or this or that. And he's like, I only want to work with Disney. They're the only company that I feel, and to his credit, he's like, yeah, you're the only one that's a match for me and my my thing. And
Right.
I think it's just interesting to see that kind of come around and then just like explode to what it is now. It was probably inevitable. I mean, I don't know. It's
Hey, hey, George, where are the small little art movies, dude?
right, man. I mean, that's the thing. Like,
It's the 50th anniversary, 40th anniversary of of him saying he just wants to make small little art movies.
yeah, and
This is my theory. When he dies, are we going to get like 105-minute experimental films that are just like
maybe
ridiculously awesome?
there's a yeah, total.
Him
I
and
could totally see
Coppola,
it
you
happening.
know? Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's
But that leads into our next slide, which Steve beautifully made, Star Wars hype peaks. Uh, and
yeah.
that's so when it came to the the question of like who's real and who's not, because that's part of the Rebel Scum thing that got lost, right?
Yeah.
Was that there was a way of figuring out if someone was real or not. You just had to give them time and they had to contribute in meaningful ways. And realistically, Steve, I am friends with people who are just Disney Star Wars dick riders who just were here for the big hype. And now that it's gone, they're leaving the hobby. Okay.
Okay.
Like, I legitimately have multiple people who I consider friends who I am pretty sure fit into that category. Okay.
Okay. Okay.
Do you?
Maybe I guess you could say that. It is one of
And then
those.
here's the next question. So what? Like,
Yeah.
that's cool. You know, it was super fun to get to know those folks. You know, like it's not the end of the world, but it did create a very different collecting environment.
It was a wave that then once the wave passed through, the environment had changed. But yeah.
Look at you with your Eddie Vedder surfing analogies.
Oh my God, yeah. I didn't even think about that. It's all
Hey,
about
when
the
does the
waves
new
with that guy.
Pearl Jam album come out?
Soon, I think it's April. Yeah.
Okay, because I was hoping we could review it together on my channel. Out here in
I'll
San
fly back out for that once.
Yeah,
No,
but I mean, I like the Star Wars hype of 2015 definitely was a positive just because it was so
yeah.
cool to get to go to Toys R Us with my kids and all that
Uh,
goofy stuff.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I, I
Um,
think I think history will look fondly on The Force Awakens. I mean, and
yeah,
Last Jedi as well. Not
yeah.
you, Rise of Skywalker, but it will look really will look really kindly
I,
on that
I,
moment.
yeah. We'll see. I have a feeling it. Let's just give it time. It's all cyclical, but yeah. At least for now, those first two are probably in better better shape for the long run.
So if you don't see what I have up here now,
Yes. Okay.
I put a GIF of Matthew McConaughey's figure from Wall Street, and this is where. So I posted today to our page, our Facebook page. Steve, we have a Facebook page.
It's still alive. It
Still
doesn't
alive.
have Star Wars in it. I made sure.
Yes. So the main thing that everyone said is that it's money. It's really money that made everything suck now. So it's funny because to me, it's not money. It's the community and the way that it fractured and the way that it didn't. I think someone, I forget who it was, someone posted in Facebook that it's a lot of it's about the negative click algorithm, you know, that algorithms that favor arguments and disagreements, and that's definitely true. But that was the same with Rebel Scum as well. I mean, you don't need an algorithm to say if you say this person's a scammer, that post is going to get a thousand more views than if you say, hey, check this out. They changed the see before the hole punch would sometimes decapitate as you escape. And that really is what happened with 2015 is just it felt I thought that Star Wars had that aura around it where everyone just said, oh, it's Star Wars, it's worth money.
Mhm.
But it turns out I didn't. Like it turns out it just reached a whole new level of that post
Yeah.
2000.
Yeah.
This is it too disconcerting seeing Matthew McConaughey
I
dying?
don't know how many more seconds I can take. You might need
Okay.
to switch lights for my sake.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and this is something I was going to ask you about too, but I think it started with this um, just kind of splitting the sense of collecting versus just being a fan. And I feel like I mean, basically from 2000 to 2000, I guess 12, 15, my whole sense of like fan community was really kind of just limited to vintage collectors and not anything outside of that. And I think, at least for me, since this whole period started, I feel like they're on different tracks for me when I think about
Right.
Star Wars as a whole. Like there are definitely two trains for me as a fan versus being a collector. And I think ultimately I feel better about it because I've been able to enjoy things more. But yeah, I feel like this is where that started for me.
So you're saying that like that the I don't quite understand what you're saying.
Yeah, I guess yeah, it's I'm trying to figure out how to best explain this, but
And if we edited the show, I would edit out that first part, but I don't. So everyone can just chill
yeah,
out,
you can just
watch
my
watch Steve
weirdness.
cook.
Oh
Let
my
him cook with
God.
this
That's
idea in
the
between. Yeah.
I don't know. I just feel like um branching out into other online like fan communities just to
Right.
enjoy Star Wars as content, I guess,
Right.
versus a collecting hobby. I separated those two once I realized like I'm not having that much fun talking about Star Wars with 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 other collectors as I am
Yeah.
with it just but that was just a personal thing for me. But I
I
noticed.
see. So
Does
you
that
know
make
why I don't
sense?
get it, Steve? Because I've always done that. Because I remember at Celebration 3 when I
Yeah.
had met, it was probably the first time I ever met Ron Salvatore. I
Mm-hmm.
was
Mm-hmm.
sitting at a table and he was making fun of everyone who was trying to get in to see George Lucas talk.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking like, yeah, big losers go see the guy who created everything we're gonna see. Hey, like so
Yeah.
I've always been on that, and
Well, yeah,
it's
I
definitely
guess.
way more fun. And definitely don't talk about Star Wars movies with vintage Star Wars
Mm,
collectors in general.
right.
You know what? Maybe that's what 2015 changed because people were a lot. It became a lot more acceptable to be a vintage Star Wars collector and say you are a Star Wars fan. For a
Yeah,
long
I guess
time,
maybe
it was
that's what I
not
was getting
acceptable.
to. Yeah, and I guess something I should say too. It's not like I think I'm lucky that I had someone like you that I could just be a fan with, or other friends that happen to be collectors. But I think just generally, I'm like, I realized like that's just not. I needed to make sure that there was a separation there.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's interesting. I think there's like a thesis here that we could eventually really tease
pro
out that
probably.
how much it changed when Star Wars vintage collectors started liking Star Wars again.
Yeah,
Like that
right.
actually
Or
is
or
sort of
or hating it
sort of a
more.
loss. Yeah, or hating it more, but just I mean like with Revenge of the Sith and Attack of the Clones, just like forget it, you know, like what do you think? I'm gonna show up and have like a deep conversation with Chris Goliath and Ron about Clone Wars season two. You know what I mean? Like that's not gonna happen. But
Yeah.
in today's thing, it's understood that everyone's whatever the new Bad Batch came out, and I haven't seen it yet. You know, like what am I gonna do?
Right, right, right. Yeah. Yeah.
And,
I mean, yeah, it's one of those expanding environments just like Facebook was to the
yeah.
forums or whatever. But
And
yeah.
maybe that's really what it is. Maybe it's just the expansion. Maybe it's just that. It's just diffusion.
The
So
amoeba is, yeah.
so much diffusion, and it's hard. What I think going back to my whole hierarchy thing, the hierarchy thing in Rebel Scum was open to everybody and anybody, right? It
Yeah.
wasn't like you had to do something to be in it. You could be poor and not have toys and still be a valuable member of the thing. You could be a newbie, you could be young, you could be old. But the process of getting into it was pretty regular and it helped to keep things kind of congealed.
Right. Yeah.
I guess there's a trial by fire. More Steve talk. And then this is something which I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen with discussing this, Steve.
Well,
But
yeah.
yeah,
You brought this particular topic up before, and if for those not watching, I put this. I think the way you'd outlined it, it was just basically uh, Trump and the Last Jedi, and we've talked about this before. Like, I think when it was happening, it definitely was a topic of conversation. But I feel like maybe this is also maybe tied into my separation of uh, you know having fun as a fan and trying to just talk about goofy Star Wars versus collecting. I feel like there's just like that social schism that was there before all this, but I think it was just like the next milestone of that separation, at least for me.
well, okay. So there's so many things happening here, right?
Yes, yes.
So political conversations were not allowed on Rebel Scum.
Right, right, right.
you could still suss out someone's political allegiance by how they talked about certain things, right?
Yeah.
Like you could always kind of sniff it out, but it was never upfront.
Right. Yeah.
You were not in touch with each other outside of collecting Star Wars toys.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hmm.
So I never had to discuss the tenets of what's that thing? What's that thing where people don't believe in any government at all? The wrong politics.
Oh,
What is it called? The libertarian
libertarian.
politics.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
So it turns out I was friends with a libertarian for 8 years before I learned he was libertarian. Okay. Now that's my friend.
That's the power of rebel scum, you know?
Like that's my friend. Like
Yeah.
I might not
Right.
agree with him politically, but like that's my friend. And and if you become friends with somebody on a Star Wars thing, you inevitably the amount that you put forward your political beliefs. So there's multiple things happening. There's just the general fact that all of a sudden now I know who are my centrist friends, who are my leftist friends, who are my kooky leftist friends, who are my centrist right friends, who are my like whoa. Like I know so much more about the far right because of my Star Wars collecting. Because like these are my friends, which is complicated when you are friends with
That
people who deny the
that
validity
is.
of others. But
Yeah.
but still, like so even going beyond that extremism that's infected our whole society, just that fact really changed the way that we interact with each other because like you just know that it's a topic of it doesn't even have to be a topic of conversation. Now there's good
No.
parts too. There's
Sure.
good parts too, which is like, oh, you have kids? Yeah, I have kids too. I didn't know who had kids. I didn't know who didn't have kids. I didn't know who had a boat, who collected guns, who collected watches, who collected music posters, who
Right.
was a super big fan of the Sex Pistols. Who, like I didn't know any of this stuff, but
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
it didn't factor in at all. It's a net negative, a huge net negative, but there are positives to it, I think.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's the first layer, knowing anything about, right? Like knowing anything about our political differences is just a bummer. And then America suffered through what I call COVID-16.
Yeah. I saw that. I'm like, I think I know where you're going with that.
So COVID-16 is what I call the 2016 election cycle,
Yeah.
which is, do you remember the beginning of Terminator 2 when they're like describing when Skynet took over? If
Yeah,
they look
right. Yeah.
back and they look at the end of our civilization, they will go, oh, it was right here, 2016. Yeah, this is where the internet took over. Yeah, this is where the human mind could not handle the internet. Up
Right.
until
Yeah.
this point, it was a
Yeah.
boulder and they were able to carry it, but it got
It
5,000
just.
pounds heavier and
Yeah.
they got crushed.
Yeah.
Like, Daddy, what led to the end of the world? Well, a lot of things led to it, but this was the turning point. So that was it. That election cycle, the amount that both sides were being fed garbage and incentivized and given, and like the way that companies were incentivized to keep us at our throats,
Yeah.
and we all fell for it. We all bought it hook, line, and sinker. Okay. Every single one of us has Facebook friends who say, delete me if you want, on both sides. Okay. Like legitimately saying, like, fuck you if you don't agree with me. Right.
Yeah.
So that really hurt because we were already weakened by Facebook knowing about our political allegiances. And now every single click farming company in the world, every single razor company, every single platform is just begging for us to hate each other. They want it so bad because they know it'll work. And then Last Jedi comes out.
Yeah. I think of both of those moments as like waking up in a bizarro world. I don't know. They had similar feelings both times. Like the next day, I'm like, wait, what?
It's the
uh,
exact same thing.
yeah, yeah,
Last
yeah.
Jedi is okay. Also, not for nothing. Tiger King is also about the 2016
Oh yeah,
election.
right. Yes, yeah.
Put that aside. That's
Right.
one I'm
Put a pin in that one. Yeah.
yes. So that was about the 2016 election. Last Jedi and its reaction was, to me, the first time I realized, oh no, we are just going to be relitigating the 2016
I
election
I yeah,
over and over again with different things. We're just going to put different things in the middle there, and then we're
yeah.
going to argue about what they are, and everyone's just going to keep collecting the clicks and making money off of our misery.
Yeah. Um that's pretty much it.
So I'm very happy, right? Because obviously I'm on the left. I don't think I'm an extremist. I think I'm a centrist. Probably extremists on the right think I'm an extremist, but that doesn't matter. But I'm happy to have Republican friends. I'm happy to have friends on the right with whom I disagree. Some of the most useful political debates I've ever had are with Star Wars fans who happen to be on the other side, you know. Um,
Yeah.
but that's the exception. And in general, it's the other way. And I'm this is another slide that I added, Steve.
Okay.
And this is the Empire State Star Wars Collectors Club.
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah, now I see everybody. Okay.
You know, and it's like it's weird because like the it's not on purpose, and I don't know if everyone notices it, but there's a political divide in this collecting club, which I helped to found. Right, I wasn't the founder, but I was one of the founding members,
Yeah, yeah.
and it's a perfect symbol of what this hobby can be, just people getting together and being happy and just sharing things together and whatever differences they are. But it's sort of fractured along, and it's not straight along political lines, it's also geographical and stuff like that. I don't
Yeah.
even fully know because I'm not really in on it. I just notice that things are
Uh-huh.
different,
Yeah.
and it's like it's probably tied into this kind of stuff. And that leads to our next thing, Steve, which exacerbated this problem. Not that, which I would say is COVID,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
all of those people who I disagree with politically, right? Hey, you want less taxes, you think welfare is bad. Hey, I don't agree with you. That's that. You
Yeah.
think Trump is an awesome guy. Oof, that one's a little bit tough, but all right, he's very charismatic. Okay, but then when it became a point of pride to put my life and my pregnant wife's life in danger, it, it's like even with Trump, I could handle that division.
Right. Yeah.
But when the common good and the safety of everybody became a political question, and half of my friends were laughing about my fear of people I care about dying, like
Yeah.
how do you recover from that, Steve?
I have not. I'll just yeah.
Okay.
That's being honest. I haven't. I mean, I probably it's one of those things that just given our situation pretty much changed the way I looked at everything. I think probably, I don't know. I still feel that, but um, yeah, it's just one of those things where one situation after another was stacking to the point, like you're saying, where you can get by, but then all of a sudden it got to a point where it's like, no, sorry, but you know, um,
And it really really killed a lot of the joy of the hobby for me, because a lot of people who collect like to drink more than I do. A lot of them like golfing more than I do. I don't know, right? Like there's a lot of things, but that really added an edge to it.
yeah,
Very very unpleasant edge, even more than someone who says that they want to sell their collection to buy Trump NFTs. You know what I mean?
right,
Yeah. So yeah. So you're saying you haven't recovered yet, Steve? I felt that from you.
yeah. I'm getting there, but
Yeah.
yeah, it just happened to hit at a particularly like rough, like hard time for us, and then to see it really not, I don't know. We don't need to say anymore, but I'm
Okay.
getting there. I'm still a little bit more Luke. I'm a little Luke in the cave on that one,
Yeah.
but
Okay.
I'm not quite out off the island yet. But I'm thinking about it.
But that was a great example because there were a fair number of New York Star Wars events during that time,
Sure.
and only people who would have that are either COVID deniers or people who don't think it's a big deal, which is like a position that is like unfortunately was incompatible with me participating in this hobby and just made me feel terrible. So,
Yeah.
anyways, I hope things recover. Then,
Same.
Steve, on top of all that, the rise of the auction houses. Why do you think I put this on there, Steve?
Well, I mean it's falling right in line with this, like, right in between those two things, right? So it's I think it was obviously fueled by what you were talking about with the 2015 hype and the Matthew McConaughey of it all.
Hmm.
But yeah, thank you. Need that. Um, yeah, it's I don't know. I remember seeing it kind of come about, and I just didn't jump into it. I never did. Really, I think I remember there was one I right when things were getting started with this. It was in 2017. It was like a layout for an Oscars ad for George Lucas. I'm like, oh, I've never seen anything like that before. I'll just throw in a bid, and I happened to get it. I don't think anyone was all that interested. I'm like, okay, that's great. But then I kind of saw the amoeba grow, and at that point, like with vintage toys, I think we haven't really said this yet, but like at least for me, like I'm kind of out of that. Like the podcast is the way I
Right.
collect. Like this is my place. But yeah, the whole marketplace of it all, I think, is what really, not just the numbers, but then just the feeling of it. I don't know. That's where I
Yeah.
feel kind of
And you'll
like.
notice that we're not actually targeting grading companies. Like I'm not putting that as everything sucks now because of grading
Well,
companies.
yeah, that I guess that's something that goes back to those Rebel Scum. I'm sure there were conversations
Yeah.
about that back then too.
But
But
it is sort of, I mean, it's weird, right? Because we're collectors, so we do want things to be worth money, right? So it's not like
sure,
we
right?
don't. So
No,
so to say that it's like it's making it impure, it's never pure. It's always about buying stuff. Never
yeah.
forget, collecting Star Wars toys is directly against the thesis of the movies that we collect. Okay, it's it's
Yeah,
very not Buddhist.
right.
Um,
Yeah.
the auction houses in conjunction with the grading and the rise and the whole bunch of new money, it just it emphasized the fact, it created this weird thing where anybody who was collecting for more than 5 years would never buy anything ever. How could you possibly spend that much money when it's worth so much less?
Yeah.
And it would incentivize you to sell it. Now the funny thing is, because I started in 2005, I bought a proof card for $600, and the people who wanted it wouldn't ever spend that much, right? And
Right.
I could sell that proof card I'm talking about probably for $10,000 tomorrow if I felt like it, you know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, so it's this very weird thing of, when we're talking about the sort of the history and all that, it was exponential. Everything was exponential, and especially with these auction companies, it just became exponential. Everything
Yeah.
so, and it's because obviously there was auctions before, and those auctions were cool.
Sure.
But when there was a Star Wars toy auction, everybody knew about it. We talked about it. We saved it. Now they just keep rolling and they keep coming.
It's a machine, kind of like, you know, it's a machine, but um,
And, and not for nothing, but I don't know if you've even followed all the stuff that's been going on with vintage video games, Steve.
well, like you're talking about like packaged, like sealed video games
Yeah,
as collectibles. I mean, I knew they were a thing, but I haven't followed it. No.
it's pretty rough
Okay.
because a grading company was owned by an auction company
Mm. Okay.
who sold toys through their auction that they had graded.
Okay. Got it.
It's
Yeah.
unclear. It's unclear. I don't know if it's actually been fully prosecuted or not, but with this much money, there's going to be a lot of shadiness, a lot of stuff that makes it sort of like, ooh, it wouldn't surprise me if there isn't some kind of huge scandal in the next 5 years concerning grading companies and auctions and collusion and shill bidding and all this stuff, because it's definitely happening. So, and I'm not like pointing at one or the other.
Yeah.
Don't trust any of them. No auction company is a virtuous company. I don't mean Christie's, I don't mean Sotheby's, I don't mean Hakes, I don't mean anything, right? Like just none of them. Like they all have a rap sheet a mile long, and we're sort of jumping in and just kind of just sort of doing it and cutting the checks.
Yeah. No, that's
Um, so Steve, you just think that Rise of Skywalker is the problem, huh?
no. It's funny. I'm like, I'm one of the, probably, I guess, the few that don't think it's. I, I'm wearing a Last Jedi shirt, by the way, because I wanted to be controversial tonight. But I could have just as easily worn my Rise of Skywalker shirt. I have one of those too. Um, but I don't know. I picked this just because it kind of got the sense of I felt like where we would be in the episode at this point, just like, oh. But yeah, I don't know. I think the way you summarize it as like the beginning of the death of hype, that fit. I think
Yeah.
because everything had been so litigated and relitigated in just that couple year period from the movie before, and just the whole doomsday of Star Wars is dead and this and that. I at that point I'd kind of checked out on a lot of it. And I think with a movie like that, it kind of, and I think I said this back at the time, but it had some of the same kind of Return of the Jedi things going in the sense that I don't think what was actually made didn't seem to actually come from where it started.
Right.
and I I think people that were just as angry and upset about the one before were it's the whole tribalism thing. They were just as upset. The other side was just as upset about this, and I don't know. It's that whole like
You
fandom
know what I
collecting
want?
separation thing.
Do you know what I want to give Rise of Skywalker credit for? It, it did unify those two sides because nobody who loved either of those movies loved this movie. I mean, not
Well,
nobody, obviously. I like
yeah.
Rise of Skywalker as well, but it's not like Last Jedi supporters were like, yeah, and it's not like people who hated Last Jedi were like, yeah. It was just sort of like everyone was like, wait, there's another MacGuffin.
Right. Yeah. I yeah, and
Why
I
is
think
Lando rolling around in a shoe? What's happening in this movie? Is Finn going to
yeah.
say he's gay? That'd be no. What's he going to say? Oh my God, they killed Chewbacca. Wow. Well, that's a pretty memorable. Oh, there he is.
Yeah. Um there's there's a lot you could this is one of the things where I think the death of hype actually might help in terms of not having to relitigate this over and over again.
Yeah.
It's just I am really curious where, 10 years, 20 years from now, what this movie will be looking like. Because it seems like, yeah, they haven't quite figured out what they want to do after this, and I'm excited to see what it is whenever it does happen. But like it was a point where I think everyone needed a big emperor exhale, as this pictured. We needed a break. Like, all right, but then that's yeah, that's all I can say. But
What was this, Steve? I don't know what this was.
this is supposed to be your COVID slide. This is just one of
Oh,
my
okay.
my our favorite bright moments of that horrible period is
Okay.
the Zoom calls where people didn't, the lawyer who turned himself into a cat, and the New York Times
Okay.
had a story about it. That's all that is. That was supposed to be for COVID.
Okay. I skipped ahead. Um, this looks like one of my quotes, Steve. Is this my quote
It
the
absolutely
Ahsoka show?
is. Yeah. So I had not laughed that hard in a long time. It was one of the moments where I'm like, I want to, I am engaging with the the community I know in
So
terms
this
of
is if you're
fans.
not
Yeah,
watching,
yeah,
the quote is this is my quote about the Ahsoka movie. Who the on TV show? Who the hell
yeah.
thinks Darth Kenny Rogers is a good idea, and his sidekick Darth Aubrey Plaza doesn't help things? I like the Rinsler bad guy though. He is cool.
And
Yeah.
this is just a small excerpt from your long, your long review of Ahsoka. But yeah, no, and this is one of those things where so we're talking about Disney Plus, and I think you kind of qualified it as having a bit of indifference toward that whole side of things, and I I don't know. I think it's funny saying like with the last movie finally like feeling like we needed a break from Star Wars movies. I think when it kind of expanded to TV, and now that this many years have passed, like I need a Star Wars movie in a movie theater. I totally enjoy all this stuff, but um, I don't know. I think eh, it's getting to be a lot.
Yeah,
Which to me, as for the fans, I'm like, this is great. Like I'm totally appreciative of that, but I don't know. I know I think you have more indifference than I do, um, toward all this part of the machine that's growing now.
it's. I mean, okay, so my main issue is that I mean, no one. Okay, I have not heard anyone besides me properly talk about Star Wars because not enough people appreciate it as being a cinematic event. It is not an adaptation. Anything that is not a Star Wars movie is an adaptation breaking with the thing that it is. Jurassic Park is awesome. It's a book. Jaws is awesome. It's a book. Harry Potter, F that transphobe.
Yeah,
Beyond
yeah,
that, it's a book.
right.
All of
Yeah,
it. It's the only time. I mean, at this level. So it's like the value of Lucas understanding what film was and make that's why it is the greatest film ever made. And I love Citizen Kane, I love Contempt and all that stuff, right?
yeah,
Apologies go to whoever pleases. But as far as like what can movies do? What is the power of cinema? That's what George Lucas brought. And I love all the TV. I was, I seriously love Clone Wars. I mean, I definitely like Clone Wars more than the sequel trilogy, and I like the sequel trilogy a lot, right? But it is just a reminder that 13 years ago, whatever, 11 years ago, Star Wars was turned into IP, and whatever they do to Marvel, they'll do to Star Wars, and they'll put it in the parks, they'll put it over here, and they'll do this thing over there, this thing over there, and all the
right.
movies didn't quite work. And it's just like it's the power of cinema. That's the glory of Star Wars. And
Yeah,
now it's like, hey, Pedro Pascal's awesome.
yeah. Well, something too. Thinking about this, it ties into the whole COVID of it all too. Is like, they weren't like they obviously movies have been being made since this all happened, but I think when this whole kind of part of Star Wars was germinating, it was in this period where like actually making things was pretty difficult. So, I think that there's an imprint there. Like I think maybe over time that'll start to go away, but um, yeah, I don't know. The thing I think about is like it's funny. Like this is going to be my daughter's Star Wars. Like she in terms of what she wants to watch, if she wants to watch something that's Star Wars, it's one of these TV shows, and I think that's gonna it's like with I think like my younger half brother, he was a Clone Wars kid. Like that was his Star Wars, and I think it's because it's just the way that generation lined up. And I know it'll be similar for kids growing up with these. And I don't know.
Well, tell your daughter that she's wrong. That it's about Star Wars.
Well, hey, you know what? I'm gonna be taking her to the 25th anniversary of the Phantom Menace. That'll be her first big screen
Nice.
Star Wars experience. I figured you would appreciate that, but
Yeah, that was my kid's first. Was
yeah.
the 3D Phantom Menace.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
I now have whatever. Good. Now the next slide is a little bit too rough.
Oh
Um,
yeah,
but
yeah,
someone who I considered a friend, someone who I considered not like a friend, okay, but in the hobby, there are people who you consider to be top shelf people, right? And they might not be a friend, but you consider them to be above reproach, contribute more than they take, absolutely awesome, awesome people who you like. You see them at celebration and you don't forget their name, and you're very happy to see them, and they have great swag.
yeah,
And having one of those people in our community, having Kevin Lentz turn out to be a convicted child pornographer, and like that that really, I don't know how this face staring at me. How do I get this out of here? No, that's nice. I know what I need to do. I don't want, like, that really affected me.
yeah,
And I
yeah,
think it affected a lot of people because it was sort of like part of the old crew, someone from the Rebel Scum days who did it the right way,
Hmm.
who started a great website, who built, who did things, and then talk about knowing too much about someone personally.
Right. Yeah.
There's that, and I don't know. I also worry that is it are there more people amongst us like that? Is it possible that our hobby, because it's based on collecting children's stuff, is it possible that it's attracting to people with that illness, which they will sometimes inflict on other people? I don't think
Yeah.
so. But if it happens again, how will we feel? And if it happens two more times, and at what point? Uh, I don't know. So
Yeah. No, it's yeah, one of those waking up in bizarre world moments where you're like, wait, what? And yeah, really hard, really really hard. Um,
and it's the reaction to it was weird too, because like Dianoga was actually the only place that really talked about it.
oh, okay.
Um, yeah,
Yeah, I
because
guess that was I think, but yeah, you're right. I mean, I didn't see anything discussed anywhere about it. Only just hearing from a handful of people, like, and that's it. But I wasn't part of the Dianoga group, but
and the reasoning that I was given by a lot of people who didn't want to discuss it, it's like, well, he's a friend of ours, but if he did this, that's terrible, but we don't know that he did it, and we have to be loyal. It's like, dude was convicted, so I mean, first of all, the police don't goof around with that stuff. They don't arrest somebody for that unless they really really know. Like, I'm not like Mr. Blue Lives Matter over here, but I give the police due where they definitely need it. That is an area they do not mess around at all. And I'm not
mhm.
saying that everyone who's ever been convicted, who's ever been arrested for that is guilty, but it's very likely. And then he was, and then we're still just not talking about it. And to me, like, that's like a wound in our hobby, and I
Very
feel like,
much, yeah, yeah.
but
No,
here we are
it's
talking about it. What are we going to say besides just, damn, that's terrible?
yeah. I I don't know what else to say at this point too. Let's yeah.
Oh, okay, in that case, fine. You want to just be all happy? You want to be all happy, Steve? Why don't we
I,
go to your
I tried. This is my Hail Mary to kind of bring us.
masterpiece? This is a
Yeah,
masterpiece.
yeah.
Because
So
next month is going to be all a celebration of all the things that are great about this wonderful hobby in the Star Wars Collectors Archive, and this little corner of the hobby, this little train track that we jumped on, and we've added some ameliorations to some of the train stops, but yeah. So
yeah,
so what Steve put up here is two pictures. One, I assume, drawn by his daughter on the right. Is that correct?
it was a commission. It's actually drawn by me, but
Oh, well, oh,
yeah.
well, good job.
Thank you.
Is that Chewbacca wearing a hockey jersey? What's he wearing there?
No. So speaking of like the positive impact of the whole Star Wars on TV era, so uh, my daughter, for I guess it's understandable reasons, uh, it was what the last season of The Mandalorian. She thought that the lettuce pirate guy was the funniest thing ever. Like she just loved him. She called him Captain Lettuce, and we were just out at a restaurant one day, and this is what she usually does. She'll draw her own things, but then she'll say, "Can you draw me so and so? Draw me this." So I'm a commissioned, poorly skilled commissioned artist,
Yes.
but I drew her a little crayon drawing of Captain Lettuce, the pirate, and yeah, it's one of those things. Where it's like that's the separation, you know. It's I'm not thinking about the collecting hobby at all. I'm thinking about just joy and Star Wars and seeing a kid just like loving it. And so that's why I put this on here. And then I paired it with something you posted recently, which was your daughter's review of The Last Jedi, which was absolutely like well ahead of her time, way wiser than this is exactly why I didn't want to discuss Star Wars with collectors, which is
Yeah.
what your daughter wrote. And I mean, I
So
think
so
the
I'll
yeah.
read this. So
Yes, please do.
she was 10 years and 3 days old when she wrote this review of Star
Okay.
Wars: The Last Jedi.
Yeah.
Okay. Star Wars Last Jedi completely destroys whatever you think it will be like, as people have been saying. It really does not care at all what you think, and it is completely different. It is dark, but it is still able to be funny movie. I have to say the Porgs are the best part. Without Porgs and Poe, Star Wars would be dark and different movie. It break that breaks all the rules of Star Wars. But just because it is extremely dark, that does not mean that it is a bad movie. Sure, there are some scenes that you do not like,
Right?
but there are a lot of scenes that love and think is funny and exciting. So don't say boo and because it is a Star Wars movie directed by someone brave who wants things to change up a bit.
There you have it. Like that is the most like level-headed, well-rounded, like it sums up how I felt about like all this new stuff that people are so up in arms about in terms of Star Wars. Like that's it. That's exactly the mindset you need to be in.
Yes.
And I think I'm gonna use that, so don't say boo. I mean that's gonna stick for me.
I don't know where she got that from. I don't
Yeah.
use that expression.
Yeah. No,
You
it's
might sniff a little bit of my inspiration. You might sense
yeah.
she is my descendant based on some of the writing there.
Yeah.
How aggressively contrarian she is at 10 years old.
Yeah.
She said, "You're
Yeah.
too stupid to get it, pal. Doesn't mean it's not a good movie, all right."
Right. Yeah. Yeah. But it's said with such tact, you know?
Yeah.
Way more tact than most of the internet was writing about that movie.
And the movie was 3 days old when she wrote that
I
too.
know. Yeah. No, it's just yeah. That's that yeah. Preserve that. Make sure that doesn't get lost.
Oh yeah. But so yeah, I mean, so like in the end, if I had to sort of summarize why does it suck now, most of the reason, if it sucks at all now, it just 100% the common denominator is the internet. That's just it. It's just the way that the internet has changed, has made the political aspects more present. The amount of money has made that more difficult. The community itself is a little bit more fractured because of it. It has perhaps put some people in positions of sort of prominence that might not be the best for the hobby as a whole, or maybe, who knows, we'll find out. But I think that's ultimately what it ends up being. And it was the internet that allowed Rebel Scum to happen. And it was the internet that allowed the used groups to happen. So the
Yeah.
only reason we have a damn community in the first place is because of this technology. So
Yeah.
what are we gonna do? Be a Star Wars podcast that looks down on technology?
Yeah, no, and it's like the generational aspect of it all. Like seeing things like this, or seeing kids like your kids' age that love the prequels. Like you see that. I really realized like I needed to broaden my view of who's enjoying Star Wars and for what reasons and what where they experienced it, and I think that has been like at least for me a healthy change to just make sure I'm not you know just stuck in one place. So I think there's hope, and we're gonna talk about that, but
Yeah.
yeah,
I do wonder, does there have to be a crash in the value in order for the hobby to keep going? Because how can people jump in if everything's so
yeah,
expensive now?
I don't,
I guess,
yeah,
I
yeah.
guess there's lower price stuff. I guess there's
Well,
price.
yeah, I think, and that's true. There always has been. I hope I feel like
But
we
like Golden Age comics. If you want to just jump into Golden Age comics, good luck. It's like if you're just like, I wouldn't mind a first appearance of Robin. Like you're never gonna find it. It's gonna be tens of thousands of dollars.
yeah.
I don't know. I mean, that doesn't mean people don't collect, but
Yeah. Yeah. It it'll be interesting. Yeah. So we're like 14 years in now. I'm sure if we went back, I don't want to go back and listen to what we were talking about back then, but I wonder if the sense would be, um, you know, how much change could we actually foresee, and how much has changed and how much hasn't? I don't know. I think some of it has in big ways for the internet, but yeah, we're here. Hey, we're still here, right? The things that's
Yep.
pretty much the same.
And really the best thing has always been the get-togethers. And now that COVID is not over, but now that COVID is in stages of remission and we're able to get together more, it's a little bit less charged. I think more good times are coming
Yeah.
because we want more sweaty guys sitting around about Star Wars toys. And it doesn't matter who they vote for, and it doesn't matter where they come from. Yeah. All right. Well, good. So I think that's the official end of this episode. Steve, what do you think of that?
Pretty smooth, right?
Smooth. That makes it
Smooth.
sound boring.
It got dark at times, right? But
Yeah,
it
not
was
not too dark.
not too dark. Yeah.
So the real question is there going to be something I'm going to have to edit out, try and like precisely edit out? I don't think so. The only thing that would have been dangerous was if I sort of like went on one of my little rants or whatever. I don't think I did. Did I?
I think the rant meter stayed pretty low.
Good.
That's the
Good.
sense I got. You know, I think you're safe.
All right. Mr. Nice Guy still in place. So check us out next month. We'll be coming back. Star Wars collecting, vintage Star Wars collecting doesn't suck because all that stuff that I said is gone is still here. It's just maybe a little harder to find.
Yeah.
Wampa wampa.
Adios.